The tractor was sinking, not slowly, violently, metal groaning as mud swallowed the rear axle whole. Ava Sterling stood 50 feet away, frozen, watching her father's legacy disappear into the flooded field. One machine. That's all she had left. If it went under, the bank would foreclose by Monday. A stranger's voice cut through the rain. "Got a winch cable?" She spun around. A man in a soaked flannel shirt stood there, rain streaming down his face, eyes locked on the tractor like he could see straight through to the problem. "Who the hell are you?" she shouted. He didn't answer. He was already moving. Want to see if he saves it or if everything falls apart? Stay with me until the end, hit that like button, and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The fuel gauge hit empty 20 minutes before the engine died. Noah Hayes didn't panic. Panic was a luxury he'd stopped affording himself around the same time he'd learned to change diapers with one hand and hold a phone with the other. He coasted the truck onto the shoulder, gravel crunching under bald tires, and killed the ignition. Silence rushed in. No radio, no hum of the highway, just wind pushing through dry grass and the distant complaint of a tractor engine that sounded like it was eating itself alive. He sat there for a moment, hands still on the wheel, staring at the empty road stretching ahead. Somewhere behind him was the apartment he'd been evicted from. Somewhere ahead was a cousin's couch he'd been promised in a town he'd never seen. And right here, in the middle of nowhere, was the reality he kept running into no matter how far he drove. He was out of options. Noah pulled his phone from the cup holder, 2% battery, no service. "Perfect," he muttered. He climbed out, boots hitting gravel, and circled the truck. The bed was loaded with everything he owned. 2 duffel bags, a toolbox that had been his father's, a car seat he'd forgotten to return to his ex. He should have returned it. She'd asked 3 times. But every time he looked at it, he thought about the last time Ethan had sat in it, sticky hands gripping a juice box, asking if they were going to McDonald's. Noah shook the memory off and scanned the horizon. Fields on both sides. A farmhouse maybe half a mile up, roof sagging, and that tractor, old green, laboring hard in a field that looked more like a swamp than cropland. The engine coughed, sputtered, went silent. Noah waited. 10 seconds. 20. It didn't restart. "Shit," he said, to no one. He wasn't planning to get involved. Wasn't his problem. But his feet started moving anyway, cutting across the field, boots sinking into soft earth. The tractor sat still now, rear wheels half buried, hydraulic lines leaking something dark onto the mud. And standing beside it, hands on her hips, was a woman who looked like she'd been arguing with the universe and losing. She didn't notice him until he was 10 feet away. "Need help?" Noah called. She whipped around, and for a second he thought she might throw something. Her hair was pulled back in a ponytail that had mostly given up. Dirt streaked her jeans. Her jacket was too clean for the work she was doing, like she'd bought it yesterday and hadn't figured out yet that it wouldn't stay that way. "Who are you?" she asked, voice sharp. "Someone whose truck just died a quarter-mile back," Noah said. "Saw you were stuck." "I'm not stuck." He glanced at the tractor. "You're half sunk and leaking hydraulic fluid." Her jaw tightened. "I know what I'm doing." "Didn't say you didn't." He stopped a few feet away, close enough to see the exhaustion around her eyes. "But that line's been leaking for a while, and if you don't patch it soon, you're going to lose pressure completely. Then you're not driving this thing anywhere." She stared at him. Not the suspicious kind of stare, but the one people give when they're too tired to argue and too proud to admit it. "You a mechanic?" she asked. "Something like that." "Something like that," she repeated, half mocking. "Great, that's exactly what I need, someone who's something like useful." Noah almost smiled. "You always this friendly?" "Only when strangers wander onto my property and start giving me advice I didn't ask for." "Fair enough." He stepped back, hands up. "Good luck with the tractor." He turned to leave. "Wait." He stopped. She was looking at the tractor now, not him. Her shoulders dropped an inch. When she spoke again, the edge was gone. "How bad is it?" Noah walked back over, crouched beside the hydraulic line. It was worse than he'd thought. The fitting was cracked, the hose frayed. Temporary fixes might buy her a day. Maybe. "Bad," he said, "but fixable. You got any spare hose?" "In the barn. Maybe." She hesitated. "I don't know what's in there. My father kept everything, but I haven't gone through half of it." Noah stood. Your father's place? Was. It's mine now. She said it like she was still trying to convince herself. Ava Sterling. Noah Hayes. She nodded once, a businesslike gesture that didn't quite fit the mud on her boots. If you can get this tractor running, I'll pay you. I don't have much, but don't need money, Noah said. Need gas. Maybe a place to sleep tonight while I figure out what's wrong with my truck. Ava studied him. He could see her weighing it. Stranger, broken down truck, no references, no reason to trust him, but desperation had a way of making decisions easier. One night, she said, you fix the tractor, you can stay in the guest house. There's no heat, but the roof doesn't leak, probably. Deal. She pointed towards the barn. I'll meet you there. Don't touch anything expensive. How will I know what's expensive? You won't, that's the point. She walked off, boots squelching in the mud. Noah watched her go, then looked back at the tractor. It was older than he'd expected, probably 30 years, maybe more. The kind of machine that should have been retired a decade ago but kept running because there was no money for a replacement. He recognized the feeling. The barn was worse than the tractor. Noah stood in the doorway, taking it in. Tools scattered across workbenches, most of them rusted. Spare parts stacked in corners with no labels. An engine block sitting in a puddle of its own oil. And in the back, half hidden under a tarp, something that looked like it used to be a grain auger. This is a mess, he said aloud. Tell me about it. Ava appeared beside him carrying a flashlight. She swept the beam across the space, illuminating more chaos. My father never threw anything away, she said. Always thought he'd need it someday. Turns out someday is now, and I have no idea what half of this stuff even is. Noah stepped inside, scanning the benches. You grew up here? No, I grew up in Chicago. My dad ran this place. I ran a tech company. We had a deal. He didn't ask me to come back. I didn't ask him to retire. Her voice flattened. Then he had a heart attack, and the deal didn't matter anymore. How long's it been? 8 months? She handed him the flashlight. The bank's been patient, mostly, but patience runs out. Noah found a spool of hydraulic hose on a shelf, checked the diameter. Close enough. They threatening to foreclose? Not yet, but they sent someone last week. Compliance officer. Walked through the whole property, took notes, told me I had 30 days to fix a list of safety violations, or they'd shut me down. She leaned against the door frame. I don't know how to fix any of it. I can run a board meeting, I can close a funding round, but I can't fix a tractor. Noah grabbed a wrench from the bench, tested the weight. Why not sell? Because my father spent 40 years building this place, and I'm not going to let it die because I don't know what I'm doing. She paused. Also, someone's been making offers, cash offers, way below market value, and every time I say no, something else breaks. You think they're sabotaging you? I think coincidences stop being coincidences when they happen 5 times in 2 months. Noah filed that away. He didn't know Ava Sterling, didn't owe her anything, but he knew what it felt like when the walls started closing in. When every door you knocked on stayed shut. When people looked at you and saw failure instead of potential. Let me get the tractor running first, he said. Then we'll figure out the rest. It took 3 hours. Noah worked under the last of the daylight, replacing the hydraulic line, bleeding the system, checking every connection twice. Ava stayed nearby, handing him tools when he asked, not talking much. She didn't hover, didn't micromanage, just watched, like she was trying to memorize what he was doing in case she ever had to do it herself. When the sun dropped below the horizon, she brought out a work light. When his hands got too cold to grip the wrench properly, she disappeared and came back with coffee in a thermos that looked like it had survived a war. It's terrible, she warned, handing him the cup. She wasn't wrong. It tasted like something scraped off the bottom of a parking lot. He drank it anyway. You didn't have to come out here, Ava said after a while. Truck was dead. Didn't have anywhere else to be. Still, she wrapped her hands around her own cup. Most people would have kept walking. Yeah, well, Noah tightened the last fitting. Most people are smarter than me. He wiped his hands on a rag, climbed into the tractor seat, and turned the key. The engine turned over once, twice, caught, settled into a rough idle that smoothed out after a few seconds. Ava exhaled. Noah killed the engine, climbed down. It'll hold, for now, but you're going to need to replace that whole hydraulic assembly before the end of the season. This is a Band-Aid. How much does a hydraulic assembly cost? More than you want to spend. She nodded slowly. Story of my life. They walked back toward the farmhouse, boots crunching on gravel. The guest house was a small structure set back from the main building, windows dark, paint peeling. Ava unlocked the door, flipped a switch. A single bulb flickered to life. Bathroom's through there, she said, pointing. Water's cold, but it works. There's blankets in the closet. I'll bring food in the morning. Appreciate it. She lingered in the doorway. The list, the one the bank gave me. You think you could look at it? Noah set his toolbox down. I can look. Can't promise I can fix everything. That's more than I had yesterday. She pulled a folded paper from her pocket, handed it to him. 30 days. That's all I've got. He unfolded it, scanned the items. Electrical panel upgrades, structural reinforcement on the main barn, safety railings, ventilation system repairs, equipment inspections. It read like someone had gone out of their way to find every possible code violation, real or imagined. This is a setup, Noah said. I know. You tell the bank that? They don't care. Violations are violations. She crossed her arms. The compliance officer's name is Richard Dalton. He's thorough, unfriendly, and he made it very clear that if I don't meet every single item on this list, he'll recommend immediate foreclosure. Noah read the list again. Half of it was legitimate. The other half was borderline absurd. Who's making the offers to buy? Investor named Marcus Hale. Owns half the county. Keeps saying he wants to help me transition out gracefully. Her voice turned bitter. Like I'm some charity case who doesn't know what she's doing. Maybe he's right. She flinched. Noah didn't apologize. I'm not saying you can't do this. I'm saying you don't know how yet, and that's fine. But you're going to have to learn fast, or Hale's going to get exactly what he wants. Ava's expression hardened. Then teach me. I'm not a teacher. You fixed my tractor in 3 hours. You read that list like you've seen 100 just like it. You know what you're doing. She stepped closer. I'm offering you a place to stay, 3 meals a day, and whatever cash I can scrape together. In exchange, you help me save this place. Noah should have said no. Should have walked out, fixed his truck in the morning, kept driving. But he looked at Ava Sterling, standing there covered in mud, exhausted, stubborn as hell, and saw something he recognized. Someone who refused to quit even when quitting made sense. 1 month, he said. I'll get you through the inspection. After that, I'm gone. She stuck out her hand. Deal. He shook it. Neither of them mentioned that 30 days wasn't enough time to fix everything on the list. Neither of them mentioned that Marcus Hale wasn't the kind of man who took no for an answer. And neither of them mentioned that the storm forecast for next week was already being called the worst in a decade. Some things you didn't say out loud. You just got to work. Noah woke to the sound of metal scraping concrete. He sat up fast, blanket tangled around his legs, heart pounding before his brain caught up. The guest house was still dark. Through the window, he could see a light on in the barn. He checked his phone. 4:30 in the morning. He pulled on his boots and headed outside. Ava was dragging a sheet of corrugated metal across the barn floor, boots squealing with each step. She tied her hair back with what looked like a piece of wire. Sweat soaked through her shirt despite the cold. You know it's not even 5 yet, right? Noah said from the doorway. She didn't stop. I know what time it is. You sleep at all? Some. How much is some? Enough. She dropped the metal with a clang that echoed off the walls. The roof's leaking in 3 places. If it rains again before I patch it, half the equipment in here is going to rust through. Noah looked up. Water stains spread across the ceiling like dark continents. You can't do this alone. I've been doing it alone for 8 months. Yeah, and look how that's working out. She turned, and the exhaustion on her face was so raw it stopped him cold. What do you want me to say? That I'm in over my head? Fine. I'm in over my head. But my father built this place with his own hands, and I'm not letting it fall apart because I'm too tired or too stupid to figure it out. Didn't say you were stupid. You didn't have to. She picked up a hammer, examined a bent nail like it had personally offended her. Everyone else already thinks it. The bank, Marcus Hale, even the guy at the hardware store looks at me like I'm playing dress-up. Noah stepped inside, picked up the other end of the metal sheet. Where's this going? She blinked. You don't have to eat. I know. Where's it going? She pointed to the ladder leaning against the wall. They carried the sheet over together, Noah climbing first, Ava feeding it up to him. The roof was worse than it looked from below. Shingles missing, boards soft with rot. He laid the metal across the worst section, Ava handing him nails one at a time. My ex used to do this, Noah said, hammering. Get up at 4, start working, push until she couldn't anymore. Thought if she just worked hard enough, everything would fix itself. Did it? No, she burned out, left me with our kid in a pile of debt. He drove another nail home. Point is, you can't fix everything by not sleeping. I'll sleep when the roof's done. The roof's never going to be done. There's always going to be something else. Another leak, another machine breaking down, another inspection. He looked down at her. You keep going like this, you're going to collapse before Hale ever gets the chance to buy you out. Ava climbed up beside him, sat on the edge of the roof with her legs dangling. The sun was starting to rise, painting the fields in shades of orange and rust. I had a company in Chicago, she said quietly. Sterling Tech Solutions. We did data infrastructure for mid-sized firms. Nothing flashy, but it was mine. Built it from scratch, grew it to 40 employees, had clients in 6 states. She picked at a splinter on the roofing. When my father got sick, I thought I could do both. Fly back on weekends, keep everything running, but he got worse, and the company needed me, and I kept trying to be in 2 places at once. What happened? I sold it, took the first offer that came in so I could be here when he died. Her voice cracked. I got here 2 days too late. Noah didn't say anything. There wasn't anything to say. So yeah, Ava continued, I know I don't know what I'm doing. I know this place is falling apart, but it's all I have left of him, and I'm not giving up on it. She looked at Noah. I can't. He handed her the hammer. Then stop trying to do it alone. They worked until the sun was fully up, patching what they could, marking what they couldn't. By the time they climbed down, Noah's shoulder ached and Ava's hands were raw. She disappeared into the farmhouse and came back with coffee and bread that might have been fresh yesterday. It's not much, she said. It's fine. They sat on the porch steps, eating in silence. A truck rumbled up the driveway, kicking up dust. Noah tensed, but Ava just sighed. That's Richard Dalton, she said. Right on time. The man who climbed out of the truck looked like he'd been built specifically to ruin someone's day. Tall, thin, wire-frame glasses that caught the light wrong. He carried a clipboard like a weapon. Ms. Sterling, he said, not quite friendly. Mr. Dalton. His eyes flicked to Noah. And you are? Hired help, Noah said. Dalton's mouth twitched. Not quite a smile. I see. Well, I'm here for a follow-up inspection, making sure you're on track with the compliance list. It's been 4 days, Ava said, and you have 26 left. He consulted his clipboard. Shall we start with the barn? They followed him inside. Dalton moved through the space like he was cataloging evidence for a trial, taking photos, jotting notes, stopping every few feet to point out another violation. The electrical panel was outdated. The floor drains were clogged. The ventilation system was insufficient. Every word out of his mouth made Ava's shoulders tighten a little more. This beam, Dalton said, tapping a support column with his pen. It's compromised, needs to be replaced entirely. Noah ran his hand along the wood. There was rot, yeah, but not where Dalton was pointing. It's surface damage, the core's solid. Dalton looked at him over his glasses. And your qualifications are? 10 years in fabrication and structural work. I see. Well, I'm certified by the State Agricultural Safety Board, and I'm telling you it needs replacement. He made another note. Unless you'd like to provide documentation of your expertise? Noah's jaw tightened. Ava put a hand on his arm. We'll replace it, she said. They moved to the next building, and the next. Dalton found violations in places Noah wouldn't have thought to look. Some were legitimate. Others felt invented. By the time they finished, the list had grown by 7 items. You're making this harder than it needs to be, Dalton said, standing by his truck. Mr. Hale's offer is still on the table. You could walk away from all of this, start fresh somewhere else. I'm not interested in starting fresh, Ava said. Then I'll see you in 3 weeks. He climbed into his truck, paused. For your sake, Ms. Sterling, I hope you're making real progress by then. The bank doesn't like uncertainty. He drove off, leaving a cloud of dust that took too long to settle. Ava stood there, staring at the empty driveway. He added 7 things. I counted. We're never going to finish in time. Noah looked at the list Dalton had left behind. It was typed now, official, every violation numbered and categorized. Not with just the two of us, no. I can't afford to hire anyone. I'm barely keeping the lights on as it is. Then we get creative. He folded the list, stuck it in his pocket. You know anyone local? Someone who might be willing to help out? I haven't exactly been social since I got here. What about suppliers, people your father worked with? Ava hesitated. There's a guy in town, runs a salvage yard. My dad used to buy parts from him. She pulled out her phone, scrolled through contacts. Gil Brennan. I haven't talked to him since the funeral, but he seemed decent. Call him. She did. The conversation was short, awkward, but when she hung up, there was something like hope in her expression. He said he'd come by tomorrow, see what we need. Good. That's a start. They spent the rest of the day working through the easier items on the list. Noah replaced the clogged drains while Ava organized the parts inventory. It was tedious, dirty work, but it was work they could actually finish. Every checked box felt like a small victory against the weight of everything else. Around 3, Ava's phone rang. She answered, listened, and her face went carefully blank. When? She asked. A pause. I understand. Thank you for letting me know. She hung up. What? Noah asked. That was the bank. Marcus Hale just increased his offer. She sat down on a crate, phone still in her hand. 20% over market value, contingent on me accepting by the end of the month. He's trying to pressure you. It's working. She rubbed her face. That money would pay off the loan. I could leave, go back to Chicago, start over. You want to leave? I don't know what I want. She looked at him. What would you do? Noah thought about the question, thought about all the times he'd walked away from things because staying was too hard. Jobs, relationships, the apartment where his son used to live. I'd probably take the money, he said honestly. But I'm not you. What's that supposed to mean? Means you didn't sell your company for a good price. You sold it so you could be here. That's not someone who runs when things get hard. He picked up a wrench, turned it over in his hands. But it's also not my choice to make. Ava was quiet for a long time. Then she stood up, brushed the dust off her jeans. Let's get back to work, she said. Gil Brennan showed up the next morning in a truck that looked older than Noah. He was 60, maybe 65, with hands like weathered leather, and a face that had seen too much sun. He walked through the property with Ava, nodding occasionally, asking questions that actually seemed helpful. Your daddy was a good man, Gil said, standing in the barn. Stubborn as hell, but good. He'd be proud you're trying to keep this place running. I'm not sure trying is enough, Ava said. It's more than most would do. He looked at Noah. You're the one who fixed the tractor? That was me. Ava says you know your way around a toolbox. Some, Gil smiled slightly. My yard's full of parts that might help. Steel beams, electrical components, ventilation units. Most of it's salvage, but it works. I can let you have it at cost. Ava's eyes widened. Gil, I can't. Didn't ask if you could. I'm telling you what I'm offering. He pulled a folded paper from his pocket, handed it to her. Here's what I've got. Take a look. Let me know what you need. After he left, Ava stood holding the list like it might disappear if she moved too fast. Why would he do that? She asked. Because he liked your father, Noah said, and because not everyone's trying to screw you over. They spent the afternoon at Gil's salvage yard, loading steel beams and electrical panels into Ava's truck. The parts weren't new, but they were solid, better than what they had. Gil threw in a ventilation unit for free, said it had been sitting too long anyway. On the drive back, Ava was quiet. You okay? Noah asked. Just thinking. About? About how I spent the last 8 months convinced everyone was against me. The bank, the town, Hale. She glanced at him. Maybe I was wrong. You weren't totally wrong. Dalton's definitely against you, and Hale's not offering that money out of kindness. But Gil helped. You helped. She turned onto the dirt road leading home. I'm not used to people helping without wanting something back. Maybe that's a Chicago thing. Maybe. She pulled up to the barn, killed the engine. Thank you. For staying. For not treating me like I'm stupid. You're not stupid. You're just learning. They unloaded the truck together, stacking beams against the barn wall. The sun was setting by the time they finished, painting everything in shades of amber. Noah's phone buzzed. He pulled it out, saw a message from his cousin. Couch is open whenever you need it. No rush. He stared at the message. No rush. Like he had all the time in the world. Like he wasn't supposed to be somewhere else, building a life that made sense. Bad news? Ava asked. No, just a reminder. He pocketed the phone. I'm supposed to be in Kansas by now. What's in Kansas? A couch, a temporary job, the usual. He picked up a beam, carried it inside. Nothing important. Then why were you heading there? Because I had to be heading somewhere. He set the beam down harder than necessary. Can't just stay in one place when you've got nothing keeping you there. Ava was quiet for a moment. Then she said, You've got something keeping you here. A month. That's what we agreed. Right. A month. She didn't sound convinced. That night, Noah couldn't sleep. He lay in the guest house bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about all the ways this could go wrong. The inspection could fail, hail could escalate, the bank could pull the plug early. And even if they managed to get through it, what then? Ava didn't need him long term. She needed someone who'd stay. He wasn't that person. His phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't his cousin. It was a number he'd blocked 6 months ago. His ex. Ethan asked about you today. I told him you were busy. Please don't make me keep lying. Noah deleted the message, then deleted it from trash, then lay there feeling like garbage anyway. Morning came too fast. They started work on the support beam Dalton had flagged. It took most of the day, removing the rotted sections, reinforcing with steel, making sure everything was level and secure. Ava learned fast. She didn't need to be told twice how to brace a load or check a measurement. By the end of it, she was moving through the steps without asking. You're getting good at this, Noah said, wiping sweat from his forehead. I have a good teacher. I'm not a teacher. You keep saying that, doesn't make it true. They were installing the last bolt when a car pulled up. Expensive, black, the kind that didn't belong on a dirt road. A man stepped out, mid-50s, suit that probably cost more than Noah's truck. Marcus Hale. He walked over like he owned the place. Maybe he thought he already did. Ms. Sterling, he said, all charm and polish. I hope I'm not interrupting. You are, Ava said, not looking up from the bolt she was tightening. Hale smiled, didn't reach his eyes. I wanted to check in, see how you're doing with the compliance situation. We're managing? Are you? He glanced around the barn, taking in the scattered tools, the half-finished repairs. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're drowning, and my offer still stands. More than fair market value. You could be out of this mess by next week. I'm not interested. Ava. He said her name like they were old friends. I respect what you're trying to do, I really do, but this place is falling apart. Your father ran it into the ground before he died, and you're just prolonging the inevitable. Noah saw Ava's hand tighten on the wrench. My father, she said slowly, built something real. Something that mattered. And I'm not selling it to someone who's going to tear it down for profit. I'm not tearing anything down. I'm offering you a way out. I don't need a way out. I need you to leave. Hale's smile finally dropped. You're making a mistake. Then it's my mistake to make. He looked at Noah for the first time. And you are? Nobody, Noah said. I'm sure. Hale's gaze lingered a beat too long. Then he turned back to Ava. My offer expires in 3 weeks. After that, you're on your own. He walked back to his car, paused with the door open. Good luck with the inspection, Ms. Sterling. You're going to need it. He drove off. Ava stood there, wrench still in her hand, breathing hard. You okay? Noah asked. No, but I will be. She turned to him. He's going to do something. I don't know what, but he's not going to just sit back and wait for me to fail. Probably not. So what do we do? Noah looked at the barn, the fields, the farmhouse in the distance. Looked at Ava, standing there, covered in grease and dirt, refusing to back down. We finish the list, he said, and we watch our backs. The next 2 weeks blurred together. They worked from dawn until they couldn't see straight, checking off violations one by one. Gil stopped by twice more with parts they needed. A few locals started showing up too. People who'd known Ava's father, who remembered when the place was thriving. They didn't stay long, but they helped where they could. The electrical panel got upgraded. The ventilation system got repaired. The railings went up, the floors got sealed, the equipment got inspected and certified. Noah taught Ava how to weld, how to read structural blueprints, how to troubleshoot a hydraulic system. She was a fast learner, faster than he expected. But the weather kept getting worse. The forecast had been calling for rain all week. Heavy rain, the kind that turned fields into lakes and roads into rivers. Noah watched the sky every morning, watched the clouds build on the horizon, dark and heavy. "Storm's coming," he said one afternoon, standing outside the barn. Ava looked up from the equipment log she was updating. "When?" "Tomorrow night. Maybe sooner." "We're not ready." "No, but we're as ready as we're going to be." That night, the wind picked up. Not strong, but steady. The kind of wind that meant something bigger was building. Noah checked the barn one more time, made sure everything was secured. The tractor sat in the corner, newly serviced. The equipment was covered, the roof was patched. But the field was still soft from last week's rain, and the drainage system Ava's father had installed years ago hadn't been maintained. If the storm was as bad as they were saying, water was going to pool. Fast. He found Ava in the farmhouse, sitting at the kitchen table with a mug of coffee and the inspection list. 14 items left, she said, out of 63. That's not bad. It's not enough. Dalton's coming back in 6 days. If even one thing is off, he'll fail us. Then we work faster. She looked up at him. You don't have to keep doing this. You've already done more than I had any right to ask. I'm here, aren't I? For now, but you got a life somewhere else, a cousin waiting, a job lined up. The job fell through, Noah said. It wasn't technically true, but it felt true enough. And my cousin's couch isn't going anywhere. Noah, I said I'd stay a month. We're not done yet. She held his gaze for a long moment, then nodded. Okay. The storm hit the next night. It started with rain. Just rain. Then the wind came, slamming against the buildings, rattling windows. Noah stood at the guest house window, watching lightning split the sky. The field was already flooding. He could see water creeping toward the barn. His phone rang. Noah. Ava's voice tight with panic. The tractor. It's stuck in the field. I left it out there after the last repair. If it floods, I'm coming. He grabbed his jacket and ran. The rain hit him like a wall, cold, driving, relentless. He could barely see 10 feet ahead. Ava was already at the edge of the field, flashlight in hand, pointing toward a dark shape half sunk in mud. I tried to move it earlier, she shouted over the wind, but it's too deep. Noah ran to the barn, grabbed the winch cable. His hands were already numb. The tractor was 50 yards out, surrounded by rising water. If it went under, they'd lose the one piece of equipment they couldn't replace. We need to pull it out, he yelled. With what? The truck can't get traction in this mud. Noah looked around. The barn. The steel beams they'd just installed. The reinforced support structure. We use the barn, he said. Are you insane? Probably. He was already moving, hooking the cable to the main support beam. If we anchor it here and use the hydraulic jack, we can create enough tension to pull it free. That could bring down the whole structure. You have a better idea? She didn't. They worked fast, running cable, setting up the jack, testing the tension. The rain kept coming. Water was up to Noah's ankles now. The tractor was tilting, one wheel completely submerged. This has to work, Ava said. Noah didn't answer. He just started the jack. The cable went taut. The beam groaned. For a second, nothing happened. Then the tractor shifted. Inch by inch, it started moving. It's working, Ava breathed. The beam groaned again, louder. Come on, Noah muttered. The tractor lurched forward, wheels finding purchase. It pulled free of the mud, rolling toward solid ground. Noah killed the jack just as the support beam cracked. Not broke, just cracked. But it held. Ava was staring at him, soaked through, eyes wide. That was the stupidest thing I've ever seen. Did it work? Yes. Then it wasn't stupid. They stood there in the rain, breathing hard, the tractor safe behind them. And then Ava laughed. Not a polite laugh. A real one. The kind that came from relief and exhaustion, and something else Noah couldn't name. We saved a tractor, she said. Yeah. With a barn. Yeah. She was still laughing when she kissed him. It wasn't planned. Wasn't smooth. Just a sudden collision in the rain. her hands on his jacket, his hands in her hair. She tasted like rain and coffee, and something he'd forgotten he missed. When she pulled back, she looked as surprised as he felt. "I'm sorry," she said. "I didn't—" He kissed her again. This time it wasn't about the tractor or the storm or the fact that they'd just risked everything for a piece of machinery. It was about two people who'd been alone too long, who'd built something fragile and real in the space between crisis and hope. When they finally broke apart, the rain was still falling. "We should get inside," Noah said. "Yeah." Neither of them moved. "This complicates things," Ava said. "Little bit. You're still leaving in 2 weeks." "Probably." "Okay." She stepped back. "Then we don't talk about it." "Ava, I'm serious. We have an inspection to pass. That's what matters." She turned toward the farmhouse. "Get some sleep. We start early tomorrow." She walked away, and Noah stood there in the rain, watching her go. The next morning, everything changed. Dalton showed up unannounced. He didn't say hello, just walked straight to the barn, took one look at the cracked support beam, and pulled out his camera. "What are you doing?" Ava demanded. "Documenting a structural failure." He took 3 photos from different angles. "This beam was flagged for replacement. You reinforced it instead. Now it's compromised. That's a critical violation." "It held. It's fine." "It's cracked, Ms. Sterling, which means it's not fine." He made a note on his clipboard. "I'm recommending immediate shutdown of all operations until this is repaired properly." "You can't do that." "I can, and I am." He looked at her with something that might have been pity. "You should have taken Hale's offer when you had the chance." He left. Ava stood in the barn, staring at the beam. "He's right," she said quietly. "It's cracked. We can fix it. In 6 days? Noah, we don't even have the materials." "Then we find them." "With what money?" Her voice broke. "I'm out of options. The bank's going to shut me down, Hale's going to buy the place for nothing, and my father's legacy is going to disappear like it never mattered." Noah wanted to argue, wanted to tell her they'd find a way. But he looked at the beam, at the spreading crack, at the water damage from the storm, and realized she was right. They were out of time. Noah stared at the crack running through the support beam for a long time after Ava walked away. He could hear her in the farmhouse, the sound of cabinet doors slamming, footsteps pacing back and forth, angry footsteps, the kind that came from having nowhere to put the frustration except into movement. He ran his hand along the damaged wood. The crack wasn't as bad as Dalton had made it sound. It was fixable. Everything was fixable if you had the right materials and enough time. They had neither. Gil showed up an hour later without being called. He took one look at the beam and let out a low whistle. "Dalton?" he asked. "How'd you know?" Noah said. "Because that man finds problems the way vultures find roadkill." Gil circled the beam, examining it from every angle. "It's not good, but it's not catastrophic either. You could sister another beam alongside it, distribute the load. We'd need steel, at least 12 feet, maybe 14 to be safe. I might have something." Gil pulled out his phone, scrolled through photos of his inventory. "There's an I-beam sitting in the back lot. Been there 2 years. Nobody wanted it because it's got surface rust, but structurally it's sound." "How much?" Gil looked at him. "For Ava? Nothing, but you're going to owe me a case of beer when this is over." Deal. They loaded the beam into Gil's truck and brought it back within the hour. It was heavy, awkward, exactly what they needed. Noah and Gil spent the rest of the morning positioning it, drilling holes, running bolts through both beams to lock them together. Ava appeared halfway through, watched for a minute, then grabbed a wrench and joined in without asking. By noon, the repair was done. Not pretty, but solid. Dalton wouldn't be able to say it was unsafe. He'd find something else to complain about, but at least this violation was off the table. "That should hold," Gil said, wiping his hands on a rag. "Probably outlast the rest of the barn." "Thank you," Ava said. "I don't know how to repay you." "Don't need repayment. Just don't let Hale win." Gil headed for his truck, paused. "And watch out for Dalton. He's been sniffing around my yard too, asking questions about what I've been selling you. Man's got an agenda." After he left, Noah and Ava stood in the barn, looking at the reinforced beam. "1 problem down," Ava said. 13 to go. "We'll get through them." "Will we?" She sat on a stack of lumber, shoulders sagging. "Because it feels like every time we fix something, 2 more things break. And Dalton's going to keep finding violations until there's nothing left to fix. Noah sat beside her. So we stop playing defense. What does that mean? Means we stop reacting to what Dalton wants and start controlling the situation ourselves. He pulled out the inspection list, scanned it. Half these violations are subjective. Ventilation insufficient. Safety measures inadequate. He's leaving himself room to fail you, even if you meet every technical requirement. So what do I do? You document everything. Photos, timestamps, receipts. You make it so airtight that even if he wants to fail you, he can't justify it on paper. Noah tapped the list. And you bring in a third-party inspector. Someone certified who can verify that the work meets code. That way, if Dalton tries to claim something's wrong, you've got proof he's lying. Ava looked at him. That's actually smart. Don't sound so surprised. I'm not surprised. I'm just wondering why you're so good at this. Noah folded the list, stuck it back in his pocket. Because I've been on the other side. Had inspectors come through job sites looking for reasons to shut us down. Learned real fast that you can't just do the work. You have to prove you did it right. They spent the afternoon photographing every repair they'd made, organizing receipts, creating a binder that documented the entire compliance process. Ava called a certified inspector in the next county, scheduled him to come out 2 days before Dalton's final visit. It cost money she didn't have, but she put it on a credit card that was already close to maxed. This has to work, she said, sliding the card back into her wallet. It will. You don't know that. No. But I know you're not going to quit, and I know Dalton's going to have a hell of a time justifying a shutdown when you've got independent verification that everything's up to code. Ava smiled slightly. You're very confident for someone who showed up here 3 weeks ago with a broken truck and no plan. Yeah, well, things change. She looked at him, and the air between them shifted. The memory of last night hung there, unspoken but impossible to ignore. The kiss in the rain, the way she'd pulled back and said they wouldn't talk about it. Noah, we should check the drainage, he said, standing up. Make sure the storm didn't cause any washouts. She hesitated, then nodded. Right, the drainage. They walked the property line, checking ditches and culverts, neither of them mentioning what they were both thinking. The ground was still soft from the rain, puddles standing in low spots. The fields looked worse than Noah had expected. It would take weeks for them to dry out enough to work. My father used to walk this every spring, Ava said, stopping near a culvert that was half blocked with debris. He'd clear the ditches, check the grading, make sure everything would drain properly when the heavy rains came. She knelt, started pulling out branches and leaves. I never paid attention, thought it was just busy work. Noah crouched beside her, helping clear the blockage. It's not busy work if it keeps your field from flooding. I know that now. She tossed a branch aside. I know a lot of things now that I should have learned years ago, but I was too busy building my company, too busy being important in Chicago. Her voice turned bitter. Turns out none of that matters when you're standing in a field trying to figure out which end of a wrench to use. You figured it out. With your help. You would have figured it out without me. Just would have taken longer. She looked at him. I don't think that's true. They finished clearing the culvert in silence. The water started flowing again, draining the standing puddle into the ditch. Small victory, but it counted. That night, Noah couldn't sleep again. He lay in the guest house, listening to the wind, thinking about all the ways this could still fall apart. The inspection was in 5 days. They had 13 violations left to address. Even if they worked around the clock, it was going to be close. His phone buzzed. Another message from his ex. I'm not asking you to come back. I'm asking you to call your son. 5 minutes. That's all he wants. Noah stared at the message. 5 minutes. Like that was nothing. Like he could just call and say hi and pretend everything was fine. Pretend he wasn't sleeping in a guest house in the middle of nowhere, fixing someone else's problems because he couldn't fix his own. He deleted the message, then felt like garbage about it. Then got up and went for a walk because lying there wasn't helping. The farmhouse lights were still on. Through the kitchen window, he could see Ava sitting at the table, papers spread everywhere. She had reading glasses on, something he hadn't seen before. She looked exhausted. He knocked. She jumped, then saw him and opened the door. Can't sleep? She asked. You either, apparently. Come in. The kitchen was warm, Smelled like coffee that had been sitting too long. Ava's laptop was open, spreadsheets covering the screen. Financial projections, maybe. Budget analyses. The kind of work she probably used to do in a real office with real employees. "What are you working on?" Noah asked. "Trying to figure out how I'm going to pay for everything." She took off her glasses, rubbed her eyes. "The compliance work, the inspector. Next month's loan payment. I've been running numbers for 2 hours and they still don't add up." "How short are you?" 4,000, maybe 5, depending on what else breaks between now and the inspection. Noah let out a breath. "That's not a small gap." "No, it's not." She closed the laptop. "I've been thinking about Hale's offer. I thought you said you weren't interested." "I'm not, but I might not have a choice." She stood, poured herself more coffee even though she clearly didn't need it. "If I can't make the loan payment, the bank forecloses anyway. At least if I sell to Hale, I walk away with something." "You walk away with nothing. He'll tear this place apart, sell off the equipment, probably turn it into a development." "And that's different from the bank foreclosing how?" Noah didn't have an answer for that. Ava sat back down. "I'm tired, Noah. I'm tired of fighting. I'm tired of waking up every day wondering what's going to break. I'm tired of feeling like I'm failing my father over and over again." Her voice cracked. "Maybe it's time to admit I can't do this." "You are doing it. Look at what you've accomplished in 3 weeks. With your help. What happens when you leave?" There it was. The question neither of them had been asking out loud. "I don't know," Noah said. "Exactly. You don't know. Because you're not staying. You've got a life somewhere else. A kid you don't talk to but should. A cousin waiting with a couch. You're just passing through, and when you leave, I'll be right back where I started. Except now I'll know how to weld, which is great. But it doesn't change the fact that I'm alone here." Noah sat across from her. "You're not alone. Gil's helping. The neighbors have been showing up. That inspector you hired will give you credibility with the bank. It's not enough." "Then what is? What would be enough?" Ava looked at him, and in that moment, he knew what she was going to say before she said it. "You staying would be enough." The words hung between them. "Ava, I'm not asking you to. I know we made a deal. 1 month, then you're gone. I'm just saying that if you're looking for a reason to stay, this could be it. We work well together. You're good at this. And I—" She stopped, shook her head. "Never mind. Forget I said anything. I can't stay. I know. I've got nothing to offer you. No money, no stability, no future that makes any sense. I'm not asking for a future. I'm asking for help. And then what? I stay 6 months, a year, we get the place running, and then I leave anyway because that's what I do? I leave?" Noah stood, paced to the window. "I've already got one kid who thinks I abandoned him. I don't need you looking at me the same way when I finally do what we both know I'm going to do." "So you're protecting me by leaving. I'm protecting both of us." Ava laughed, but there was no humor in it. "That's convenient. It's honest. Is it? Because from where I'm sitting, it sounds like you're scared." "Of course I'm scared. You think I'm not?" Noah turned to face her. "I came here with nothing. I'm still nothing. The only reason I'm useful to you right now is because you needed someone who knew which end of a hammer to hold. But that's not enough to build a life on." "Why not?" "Because it just isn't." Ava stood, walked over to him. "You're wrong. About being nothing. About not having anything to offer." She put her hand on his chest, right over his heart. "You saved my tractor. You taught me how to weld. You figured out Dalton's game plan before I even knew there was a game. You're the reason I haven't given up yet." Noah covered her hand with his. "That doesn't change what happens in 2 weeks." "Then we have 2 weeks." She kissed him. This time it wasn't desperate or sudden. It was deliberate. A choice they were both making even though they knew it was stupid, even though they knew it would hurt later. Noah kissed her back. They didn't make it to the bedroom. Just the couch in the living room, clothes ending up on the floor, her glasses getting knocked onto the coffee table. It wasn't perfect. It was fumbling and awkward, and they laughed at one point when Noah's elbow hit the lamp. But it was real. 2 people who'd been alone too long, finding something worth holding on to, even if they couldn't keep it. Afterward, they lay there tangled together, her head on his chest, his hand in her hair. "This was a mistake," Ava said quietly. "Probably. We should talk about it." "You said we weren't going to talk about it." "That was before." She lifted her head, looked at him. "What happens now?" I don't know. That's becoming your default answer. It's the only honest one I've got. She laid her head back down. We finish the inspection. After that, we figure out the rest. Okay. But neither of them believed it would be that simple. The next 3 days were a blur. They worked through the final violations one by one, racing against the clock. The ventilation system got upgraded. The safety railings got reinforced. The equipment inspections got completed and certified. Every evening, they updated the documentation binder, adding photos and receipts, building the case they'd need when Dalton came back. The third-party inspector arrived on schedule. His name was Robert Chen, mid-40s, professional in a way that made Noah relax slightly. He walked the property with a tablet, making notes, asking intelligent questions that suggested he actually knew what he was looking at. "This is good work," Chen said, examining the support beam repair. "The sister beam is properly installed, load is distributed evenly. This meets code." "Dalton said it was a critical violation," Ava said. Dalton was wrong. Chen made a note on his tablet. Or he was looking for reasons to fail you. Either way, this passes. They went through the entire list: the electrical panel, the ventilation, the drainage, the safety measures. Item by item, Chen verified that everything met or exceeded the required standards. By the end of the day, he handed Ava a signed report. "You're in compliance," he said. "If your bank inspector has any issues with this, tell him to call me directly. I'll stand by this assessment." After he left, Ava stood holding the report like it might disappear. "We did it," she said. "Almost. Dalton still has to sign off. But we have proof. Independent verification. He can't argue with this." "He'll try. Let him try." For the first time in weeks, Ava looked genuinely hopeful. "We have 3 days until the final inspection. 3 days to make sure everything is perfect." They spent those 3 days obsessively checking and rechecking every detail. Noah tightened bolts that didn't need tightening. Ava wiped down equipment that was already clean. They were both running on adrenaline and coffee, barely sleeping, afraid that if they stopped moving, something would break. On the morning of the inspection, the sky was clear. No rain in the forecast. No disasters waiting to happen. Just a quiet Tuesday morning that felt too calm to be real. Dalton arrived at exactly 9 o'clock. He climbed out of his truck with his clipboard and his camera, and Noah could see the confidence in his posture. He thought he was going to win. Thought he'd walk through, find enough violations to justify a shutdown, and hand Ava over to Marcus Hale on a silver platter. "Ms. Sterling," Dalton said. "Mr. Hayes, shall we begin?" "Actually," Ava said, "before we start, I'd like you to review this." She handed him Chen's report. Dalton's expression didn't change as he read it, but Noah saw his jaw tighten. He flipped through the pages slowly, reading every line. "This is a third-party assessment," Dalton said finally. "Yes. From a state-certified inspector. I'm aware of Mr. Chen's credentials." Dalton closed the report, handed it back. "However, I'm the compliance officer assigned to this property. My assessment is the one that matters. Your assessment has to be based on actual violations, not subjective opinions. Everything I've documented has been a legitimate violation." "Then let's walk through them," Ava said, "and we'll see if they still exist." They started with this barn. Dalton moved slowly, taking his time, examining every repair with the scrutiny of someone looking for cracks in armor. But the cracks weren't there. The electrical panel was up to code. The ventilation exceeded minimum requirements. The support beam was properly reinforced. Even the floor drains were clear. By the time they finished the barn, Dalton had found exactly 0 violations. They moved to the next building. Same result. The safety railings were secure. The equipment was certified. The storage met fire code regulations. With each checked box, Dalton's expression grew tighter. They finished the main property in 2 hours. Dalton stood in the yard, reviewing his clipboard, pen tapping against the metal. "There's one more item," he said. "What item?" Ava asked. "We've covered everything on the list. Environmental compliance, Section 12. Noah grabbed the list from Ava, scanned it. Section 12 was about hazardous waste disposal and runoff management. Standard stuff. They'd addressed it in week 2. "We're in compliance," Ava said. "We installed proper containment for all fluids. The runoff channels were cleared, and we disposed of old chemicals according to county regulations." "I'll need to verify that." Dalton walked toward the back field, the one that bordered the creek. Ava and Noah followed. When they reached this creek, Dalton stopped. He pointed to a dark stain on the bank, where water met soil. "What's that?" he asked. Ava looked. "I don't know. It wasn't there yesterday." Dalton crouched, took a sample with a gloved hand, sniffed it. "Smells like petroleum. Could be hydraulic fluid, could be diesel." He stood, took photos from 3 angles. "This is contamination, direct violation of environmental protection standards." "That's not from us," Noah said. "It's on your property, coming from your land." Dalton made notes. "This is a critical violation. I'm recommending immediate shutdown pending environmental assessment and cleanup. That process typically takes 60 to 90 days. "No," Ava said. "No, you can't do that." "I can and I am. This property is now in violation of—" "Check the upstream flow," Noah said. Dalton stopped. "What? Check upstream. If the contamination is coming from her property, it should be heaviest at the source and dissipate downstream. If it's coming from somewhere else, it'll be the opposite." Dalton's eyes narrowed. "That's not standard procedure." "But it's basic hydrology." Noah walked along the creek bank, looking upstream. 50 yards up, near the property line, he found it. Another stain, darker, fresher, and on the other side of the fence. He called back. "Come look at this." Ava and Dalton walked up. The stain was obvious, clear contamination, spreading from the neighboring property into the creek. "That's not your land," Dalton said. "No, it's not." Noah pointed to the fence. "Property line's right there. Whatever leaked, it leaked from next door." "Whose property is next door?" Ava asked. Noah already knew the answer before she said it. "Marcus Hale's." They stood there in silence, looking at the contamination that had almost destroyed everything. Dalton cleared his throat. "I'll need to investigate this further." "You do that," Ava said, voice shaking with anger. "And while you're at it, you can explain to the bank why you tried to shut down my operation for contamination that came from someone else's property." Dalton didn't respond. He took more photos, made more notes, then walked back to his truck without another word. He drove off, leaving dust and silence behind. Noah turned to Ava. "He set you up." "Hale or Dalton?" "Both, probably." Noah walked back to the original stain, examined it more closely. "This was fresh. Someone dumped it here recently, maybe last night. You think Hale would actually sabotage me? You said weird things kept breaking, equipment failing, problems appearing out of nowhere. What if it wasn't coincidence?" Ava's hands curled into fists. "What if it wasn't?" They spent the rest of the day documenting everything. Photos of both contamination sites, measurements showing the flow direction, samples collected in clean jars. Noah even climbed the fence and found fresh tire tracks in the mud on Hale's side, leading right to the spill site. "This is evidence," Noah said. "Real evidence. Not just suspicion." "Evidence of what?" "Hale's going to deny it, say it was an accident, maybe blame one of his workers." "Maybe. But combined with everything else, the timing, the convenient violations, Dalton's connection to Hale, it's a pattern." "A pattern isn't proof." "No, but it's a start." That night, they sat in the farmhouse kitchen with all the evidence spread across the table. Photos, samples, timeline of suspicious events. It looked like a conspiracy board from a crime show. "What do we do with this?" Ava asked. "We take it to the bank, show them what's really happening." "The bank doesn't care about what's happening. They care about compliance." "Then we make them care." Noah gathered the photos into a folder. "You've been playing defense this whole time, reacting to what Dalton wants, scrambling to fix violations, trying to prove you're good enough. But you've been good enough the whole time. They've just been moving the goalposts." Ava looked at the evidence. "You think we can actually prove this?" "I think we can make enough noise that they have to look into it. And once they start looking, they'll see what we see." "And if they don't?" Noah didn't answer, because if the bank didn't care, if Dalton's report stood, if Hale's sabotage worked, then they were back where they started. Worse, actually, because now they'd used up all their time and all their options. "We have to try," he said finally. Ava nodded slowly. "Okay, we try." She looked at him across the table, and Noah saw something shift in her expression. Not hope, exactly. Something harder, determination maybe, or anger that had finally found a direction. "Thank you," she said, for not letting me quit. You weren't going to quit. I wanted to, about a dozen times. She smiled slightly. You kept getting in the way. That's kind of my thing. They stayed up late, organizing everything into a presentation they could show the bank. Every violation, every suspicious timing, every connection between Dalton and Hale they could find. By the time they finished, it was past midnight. Noah walked back to the guest house, his mind too wired to sleep. Tomorrow they'd take their case to the bank. Either they'd listen or they wouldn't. Either way, the fight was almost over. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about what came after. If they won, Ava would keep the property, keep fighting, keep building something her father would have been proud of. And Noah would leave because that was the deal. 1 month. He'd already stayed longer. If they lost, Ava would walk away with whatever Hale was willing to pay, and Noah would still leave because there'd be nothing left to stay for. Either way, he was leaving. He tried not to think about how much that bothered him. The bank manager's name was Patricia Weston, and she looked exactly like someone who'd spent 30 years saying no to people. Gray suit, reading glasses on a chain, desk so clean it could have been a stock photo. She sat across from Noah and Ava with the kind of patience that had a timer attached to it. I appreciate you coming in, Patricia said, folding her hands on the desk. But I'm not sure what you expect me to do with this. Ava pushed the folder closer. I expect you to look at it, really look at it, because what's happening isn't just about compliance violations. It's sabotage. Patricia opened the folder, glanced at the first photo. Ms. Sterling, these are serious accusations. I know they're serious. That's why I'm here. You're claiming that Marcus Hale, a respected businessman and property owner, deliberately contaminated your land to trigger an environmental shutdown. I'm saying the evidence points that way. The contamination came from his property. The timing was suspicious. And Richard Dalton just happened to find it the same day he was conducting his final inspection. Ava's voice was steady, but Noah could see her hands shaking slightly. That's not coincidence. Patricia flipped through the photos slowly. The contamination. The tire tracks. The timeline Noah had built showing every suspicious incident over the past 8 months. When she finished, she closed the folder and removed her glasses. Even if I believed this was intentional, which I'm not saying I do, it doesn't change the compliance situation. Mr. Dalton documented violations. Whether those violations were caused by sabotage or negligence doesn't matter from a regulatory standpoint. But the violations were addressed, Noah said. We have a certified third-party inspection proving everything meets code. You also have a compliance officer's report saying otherwise. Because he's lying. Patricia's expression hardened. That's a significant accusation to make without proof. The proof is right there. Ava pointed to the folder. Dalton tried to fail us for contamination that wasn't even from our property. If Noah hadn't checked upstream, we'd be shut down right now for something we didn't do. And Mr. Dalton acknowledged that error in his amended report. After he got caught, Patricia stood, walked to the window. The view looked out over the town's main street, small shops and practical buildings. The kind of place where everyone knew everyone's business. Here's the situation, she said, not turning around. Your loan is 60 days past due. You're carrying significant debt. And whether or not Mr. Hale is involved, the fact remains that your operation has had multiple safety violations over the past months. Violations we fixed, Ava said, after they were identified. The bank's position is that this property represents a high-risk investment. We've been patient, but patience has limits. She turned around. Mr. Hale has made a generous offer, one that would clear your debt and leave you with capital to start over somewhere else. I don't want to start over somewhere else. Then you need to convince me that you can actually run this operation successfully, long-term, not just patch problems as they appear. Ava opened her mouth, closed it. Noah could see her struggling for an answer that would satisfy a woman who dealt in numbers and risk assessments. I can't promise there won't be problems, Ava said finally. This is farming. Equipment breaks. Weather happens. Things go wrong. But I can promise that I'll fix them, that I'll learn from them, and that I'll do whatever it takes to make this place work. With all due respect, Ms. Sterling, passion isn't a business plan. No. But competence is. Ava pulled out another folder, this one thicker. This is a 12-month operational plan. Revenue projections based on current market rates. Expense forecasts including equipment maintenance, repairs, and compliance. I've identified 3 potential revenue streams beyond basic agricultural production: equipment rental to neighboring farms, contract services, and agritourism partnerships. She set it on the desk. It's not perfect, but it's realistic, and it shows that I'm not just fighting to keep this place because of sentiment. I'm fighting because it can actually be viable. Patricia picked up the folder, opened it. Her eyebrows went up slightly as she read. You put this together yourself? I ran a tech company for 8 years. I know how to build a business plan. Then why didn't you lead with this? Because I was too busy trying to keep the bank from foreclosing to think strategically. Ava's voice sharpened. You want to know why the operation has been struggling? It's because I inherited a property that my father ran on instinct and experience, and I had to learn everything from scratch while fighting off someone who's been trying to buy me out since before my father was even buried. Patricia read through the business plan in silence. The office felt smaller with each passing second. Noah watched Ava, saw the tension in her shoulders, the way she was holding herself together through sheer force of will. This is well constructed, Patricia said finally, but it's also optimistic. These revenue projections assume everything goes according to plan. I included contingencies for equipment failure, weather delays, and market fluctuations. The numbers are conservative. They're still projections. Patricia set the folder down. What I need is proof of concept, something that shows you can actually execute on this. How am I supposed to prove that when you're threatening to shut me down? I'm not threatening anything. I'm explaining the bank's position. Patricia sat back down, and her expression softened slightly. Look, I understand this is personal for you. I understand you want to honor your father's legacy, but the bank has a fiduciary responsibility to minimize risk. And right now, this property is all risk and no demonstrated return. Then give me 3 months, Ava said. 3 months to prove I can execute this plan. If I can't show real progress by then, I'll accept Hale's offer, but you have to stop letting Dalton sabotage me. I can't control what Mr. Dalton does or doesn't find during inspections. You can request a different compliance officer. You can require that any future violations be verified by independent inspection. You can do something other than stand by while someone with a clear conflict of interest tries to force me out. Patricia was quiet for a long moment. Then she picked up her phone, pressed a button. Janet, can you pull the file on Marcus Hale's property acquisitions over the past 5 years? Yes, all of them. Thank you. She hung up, looked at Ava. I'm not promising anything, but I will look into the pattern of Mr. Hale's purchases and see if there are any regulatory irregularities. If there are, I'll escalate it to the appropriate authorities. And in the meantime? In the meantime, you have 3 months. But understand that if you default on a payment or fail another inspection, this conversation is over. The bank will move to foreclose, and Mr. Hale's offer will likely be the only one on the table. Ava stood, extended her hand. 3 months. That's all I need. Patricia shook it. I hope you're right. They walked out of the bank into afternoon sunlight that felt too bright after the fluorescent office. Noah could see Ava shaking, the adrenaline finally catching up. You okay? He asked. No, but I bought us time. She leaned against the truck, closed her eyes. 3 months. That's not much. It's more than you had this morning. If I fail, I lose everything. Then don't fail. She laughed, but it was shaky. You make it sound so simple. It is simple. Not easy, but simple. He opened the truck door for her. You've got a plan. You've got the skills. Now, you just have to execute. And if something else breaks, if Hale tries again, then we deal with it, same way we've been dealing with everything else. Ava looked at him. We. You keep saying we. Noah realized what he'd said. Figure of speech. Is it? He didn't answer. They drove back to the farm in silence, the weight of the conversation settling between them. 3 months. That was the timeline now. 3 months to prove the operation could work. 3 months to turn projections into reality. 3 months that Noah wouldn't be there for. When they got back, Gil's truck was parked by the barn. He was unloading something from the bed, something large and covered with a tarp. What's this? Ava asked, climbing out. Insurance, Gil said. He pulled the tarp off, revealing a backup hydraulic system for the tractor. Figured if you're going to prove you can run this place, you need redundancy. Can't afford to have your only tractor go down right when you need it most. Gil, I can't pay for this. Didn't ask you to. Consider it a loan. You can pay me back when you're profitable. He started unloading components. Or don't. I've had this sitting around for 3 years, not doing anyone any good in my yard. Noah helped him carry the parts into the barn. It was a complete system, everything they'd need to swap out if the current hydraulics failed. You didn't have to do this, Noah said. Yeah, I did. Ava's father was a friend, and I don't like seeing someone get pushed around by men in expensive suits. Gil wiped his hands on his jeans. Besides, you two have been working your asses off. Figured you deserved a win. After he left, Noah and Ava stood in the barn looking at the parts. People keep helping, Ava said. I don't understand why. Because you're worth helping. Or because they feel sorry for me. You really believe that? She shrugged. In Chicago, nobody did anything without calculating what they'd get back. It's hard to believe people are different here. People aren't different, but small towns work different. You help your neighbors because someday you'll need help too. It's not charity, it's survival. Ava ran her hand over the hydraulic pump. I'm not used to needing help. Yeah, I noticed. Is that bad? It's just who you are. But you're going to have to get used to it if you want to make this work. You can't do everything alone. I had you. For a month, that was the deal. Right, the deal. She looked at him. Which expired a week ago, technically. Noah had been trying not to think about that. I know. And you're still here. Still got things to finish. Like what? Like making sure you don't fall apart the second I leave. He picked up a wrench, set it back down. And making sure Hale doesn't try anything else. So you're staying because you think I'm helpless. I'm staying because I started something and I want to see it through. Liar. He looked at her. What? You're staying because you care about this place, about what happens to it. She stepped closer. About me. Noah wanted to argue, wanted to say she was wrong, that he was just killing time until he figured out his next move. But standing there in the barn with afternoon light cutting through the gaps in the walls, he couldn't make himself say it. What I feel doesn't matter, he said instead. I'm still leaving. When? I don't know. Soon. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. Ava nodded slowly, like she'd expected that. Okay. Then while you're here, help me with the business plan. Because if I'm going to execute on those projections, I need to know what I'm doing. They spent the next week turning the business plan from theory into action. Ava reached out to neighboring farms about equipment rental, drafted contracts for seasonal services, researched agritourism options. Noah helped her price everything realistically, build in maintenance costs, create contingency plans for when things went wrong. Because things always went wrong. On day 3, the grain auger jammed. They spent 4 hours taking it apart, clearing the blockage, putting it back together. Ava's hands were bleeding by the time they finished, cuts from sharp metal edges that she didn't complain about. On day 5, a storm knocked out power for 6 hours. They ran the backup generator, but it burned through fuel twice as fast as the specs claimed. Noah made a note to budget for higher fuel costs. On day 7, one of the neighboring farmers called. He'd heard about Ava's contract service offering and wanted to discuss hiring her equipment and labor for his harvest. It was the first real lead on the revenue projections. When can you start? The farmer asked over the phone. Ava looked at Noah, covered the receiver. 2 weeks? Noah calculated in his head. If nothing breaks, yeah. She uncovered the phone. 2 weeks. We can start in 2 weeks. After she hung up, she was grinning. That's $1,200 for 3 days of work. If nothing breaks, stop being pessimistic. I'm being realistic. The tractor needs a full service before you can run it for 3 straight days, and you're going to need a second operator. I'll do it myself. You can't operate and manage the logistics at the same time. You need help. Then I'll hire someone. With what money? You just told the bank you're broke. Ava's grin faded. Right. With what money? Noah hesitated. He knew what he was about to offer, knew it was stupid, but he said it anyway. I'll do it. You'll be gone by then. Maybe not. Maybe I can stay another week or 2. Noah, it's just a couple weeks. Not a big deal. But they both knew it was a big deal, because a couple more weeks meant a couple more weeks of pretending this could work, that he could stay, that they could build something together that wouldn't fall apart the second reality caught up. The next week passed in a blur of preparation. They serviced the tractor completely, checking every system twice. They organized the equipment they'd need, practiced the logistics, built in redundancy for every possible failure point. Ava was meticulous, writing everything down, creating checklists that covered scenarios Noah hadn't even thought of. "You're overthinking this," he said, watching her add another contingency plan. "Last time I underthink something, I almost lost the whole operation. I'm not making that mistake again." There's a difference between being prepared and being paranoid. Is there? Because from where I'm sitting, paranoid is what's keeping me alive. She had a point. 3 days before they were supposed to start the contract work, Marcus Hale showed up again. Noah saw the black car coming up the drive and felt his stomach tighten. Ava was in the barn, organizing tools. He walked over, stood beside her as Hale climbed out. "Mr. Hale," Ava said, voice flat, "what can I do for you? I heard you got an extension from the bank. News travels fast. Small town." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I also heard you're taking on contract work, expanding operations. That's ambitious. It's necessary, is it?" He walked into the barn, looking around like he was already calculating what he'd tear down first. "You know, Ava, I admire your persistence. I really do. But persistence without wisdom is just stubbornness. And buying up failing farms is what exactly? Wisdom or opportunism?" Hale's smile tightened. "I provide a service. I take properties that are struggling and make them productive again. By tearing them apart and selling off the pieces. By adapting to market realities. Your father's way of farming doesn't work anymore. The margins are too thin. The regulations too strict. The only way to make agriculture profitable now is through scale and efficiency. Or by letting someone with actual knowledge run the operation," Noah said. Hale looked at him like he'd just noticed he was there. "And you are?" "Someone who knows sabotage when he sees it." "Excuse me?" "The contamination, the convenient timing of violations, the compliance officer who happens to find problems right when Ava's about to pass inspection." Noah stepped forward. "That's not coincidence. That's a pattern." Hale's expression went cold. "Be very careful about what you're accusing me of." "I'm not accusing you of anything. I'm just pointing out facts. Facts require proof. We have proof. Photos, timeline, tire tracks on your property leading right to where the contamination started." Noah pulled out his phone, showed Hale the photos. "Want to explain how that happened?" Hale glanced at the photos, then looked back at Noah with something like amusement. "You think you're clever, don't you? Coming in here, playing hero, helping the poor, struggling farmer fight off the evil investor." He stepped closer. "But let me tell you something about heroes. They're usually the first ones to leave when things get hard. And things are about to get very hard." "Is that a threat?" Ava asked. "It's a prediction. You're going to fail, Ava. Maybe not this month, maybe not next month, but eventually something's going to break that you can't fix. And when it does, I'll still be here. And my offer won't be as generous the second time around." He walked back to his car, paused with the door open. "Enjoy your contract work," he said. "I hope it goes well." He drove off, leaving silence behind. "That was a threat," Ava said. "Yeah, he's going to try something. Probably. So what do we do?" Noah looked at the barn, the equipment, the fields, looked at everything they'd built over the past month and a half. Everything that could be destroyed if Hale decided to escalate. "We don't give him the chance," he said. "We do the job perfectly. We prove the business plan works, and we make sure he can't find any way to interfere." "How?" "By being better than he expects. By being ready for anything." He turned to her. "And by not being alone when things go wrong." Ava studied his face. "You're really staying. For now." "For now," she repeated. "That's progress, I guess." They spent the next 3 days preparing like they were heading into battle. They ran through every scenario, tested every piece of equipment, created backup plans for the backup plans. By the time the first day of contract work arrived, Noah was confident they were as ready as they could be. The work itself was straightforward. Harvest season for corn, running the equipment while the neighboring farmer's crew handled the manual labor. Ava operated the tractor while Noah coordinated logistics, making sure everything ran smoothly. It was hot, exhausting work, but it felt good. Productive. Like they were finally building something instead of just preventing collapse. By the end of the first day, they'd covered more ground than expected. The farmer was happy, the equipment had held up, and Ava looked genuinely proud. "We did good today," she said, climbing down from the tractor. "Yeah, we did. Think we can do it again tomorrow?" "I know we can." They made it through the second day without incident, and the third. When they finished, the farmer paid in cash, counting out bills that represented the first real income the operation had seen in months. "You two work well together," he said. "If you're looking for more contracts, I've got neighbors who could use the help." "We're looking," Ava said. After he left, she stood there holding the money like she couldn't quite believe it was real. $1,200, she said. Just like the projections. Just like the projections. We can actually do this. We can make this work. Noah wanted to feel the same excitement, wanted to share in the victory, but all he could think about was that he'd just extended his stay by another 2 weeks. Then it would be another contract, another reason to stay, another excuse to not face the fact that he was putting down roots in a place he'd never meant to settle. That night, they celebrated. Sort of. Ava made dinner, actual dinner, instead of sandwiches and coffee. They ate on the porch, watching the sun set over the fields, not talking about anything important, just existing in the moment, pretending it could last. "I called Ethan today," Noah said suddenly. Ava looked at him. "Your son?" "Yeah, his birthday's next week. I haven't talked to him in 4 months." "How'd it go?" "He asked where I was. I told him I was working. He asked if I was coming back." Noah set down his fork. "I didn't know what to say." "What did you say?" "I said I didn't know. Then his mom got on the phone and told me to stop calling if I wasn't going to be consistent." He rubbed his face. "She's right. I'm just confusing him." Ava was quiet for a moment. "Do you want to go back?" "I don't know what I want. I spent 2 years trying to make that relationship work, and it fell apart anyway. My ex got custody because I couldn't hold down a steady job, couldn't prove I was stable. And now I'm here, doing the same thing, temporary work. No plan past next week." "You're helping me build something permanent. I'm helping you build something permanent. I'm not building anything for myself." "You could." He looked at her. "Could I? There's work here. Enough for 2 people, probably. You've seen the business plan. You helped write it. Ava, I'm not asking you to stay forever. I'm asking if you've considered that maybe you could, that maybe this could be more than just temporary." Noah stood, walked to the porch railing. The fields stretched out in front of him, dark shapes against a darker sky. He'd spent so long moving that the idea of staying felt foreign, dangerous even. "I don't know how to do permanent," he said. "Every time I try, it falls apart." "Maybe that's because you keep trying alone." She came to stand beside him. "You're good at this. The work, I mean, and you care about it. I can see it. Caring isn't enough. It's a start." He turned to face her. "What are you asking me?" "I'm asking if you'll think about it. Not decide right now. Just think about it." She put her hand on his. "Because I need help. Real help. Long term. And I trust you. That's not something I say easily." Noah looked down at their hands. Hers were calloused now, scarred from weeks of hard work. They looked like his. "I'll think about it," he said. But even as he said it, he knew the answer was more complicated than yes or no. Because staying meant facing all the things he'd been running from. His failures, his ex, his son who didn't understand why his father kept disappearing. Staying meant being accountable, and Noah wasn't sure he was ready for that. The next morning, everything changed again. Noah woke to the sound of sirens. He threw on clothes and ran outside. Fire trucks were screaming past on the main road, heading somewhere close. Smoke rose in the distance, dark and heavy. He ran to the farmhouse. Ava was already outside, phone pressed to her ear. "What's happening?" Noah asked. She lowered the phone, face pale. "It's Hale's property, the building next to our fence line. It's on fire." They drove to the edge of the property line and could see it clearly. An old storage building, fully engulfed, flames reaching 30 feet high. Firefighters were spraying it, but the building was already gone. "Think it's related?" Ava asked. "To what?" "To the contamination, the sabotage, all of it." Noah watched the fire. "I don't know, could be coincidence." But he didn't believe in coincidences anymore. By afternoon, the fire was out. The building was a total loss. And the fire marshal's preliminary report said the cause was electrical, possibly accelerated by stored chemicals, the same chemicals that had contaminated the creek. Noah and Ava stood at the fence line, looking at the wreckage. "This is bad," Ava said. "Why?" "Because if that fire was started deliberately, Hale's going to claim we did it. Retaliation for the contamination accusations." "That's insane." "Is it? We have motive. We have access to this fence line. And we just accused him of sabotage." She turned to Noah. "This could destroy everything we've built." She was right, and Noah realized that the fight wasn't over. It was just getting started. The sheriff showed up 2 hours after the fire was contained. His name was Tom Garrett, 50-something, with the kind of face that had seen too much to be surprised by anything. He walked the fence line with Noah and Ava, taking notes, asking questions that felt casual but weren't. "You two have any problems with Mr. Hale?" he asked. "Define problems," Ava said. "Disputes, arguments, threats. He's been trying to buy my property for 8 months. I keep saying no. That's been our main interaction." Garrett wrote something down. "And yesterday, I heard he stopped by." "Who told you that?" "Small town. People talk." He looked at Noah. "What about you? Any issues with Hale?" "We had words," Noah said, "about the contamination from his property that almost shut down Ava's operation." "That the contamination Dalton found?" "The contamination that came from Hale's side of the fence. We have photos." Garrett's expression didn't change. "I'd like to see those photos." They went back to the farmhouse. Noah pulled up the images on his laptop, showed Garrett everything they documented. The upstream contamination, the tire tracks, the timeline of suspicious incidents. Garrett looked through it all without commenting, face neutral. "This is thorough," he said finally. "You always document things this carefully?" "Only when someone's trying to sabotage us," Ava said. "That's a serious accusation." "It's a serious situation." Garrett closed the laptop, sat back. "Here's what I know. Hale's building burned down. The fire marshal says it was electrical, but there were accelerants present. Could be the chemicals that were stored there. Could be something else." He looked between them. "And the day before, you two confronted Hale about contamination from that same building. That's a problem." "We didn't start that fire," Noah said. "I'm not saying you did. I'm saying it looks bad. And if Hale decides to push it, you're going to need more than photos to prove you weren't involved." "Like what?" Ava asked. "Like an alibi. Where were you last night between 9 and 11? "Here. Both of us. Having dinner, talking, going to sleep." "Anyone else see you?" "No, it was just us." Garrett nodded slowly. "That's what I thought." He stood. "Look, I'll be honest. I don't like Hale. Never have. Man's bought up half the county and run off good people in the process. But not liking someone isn't the same as having evidence against them." He headed for the door, paused. "If you're right about the sabotage, you need to prove it. And you need to do it before Hale decides to turn this fire into a criminal case against you." After he left, Ava sat at the kitchen table, head in her hands. "This is exactly what he wanted," she said. "He sets his own building on fire, destroys the evidence of contamination, and makes us look like vengeful criminals all at the same time." "We don't know he said it." "Who else would?" Noah didn't have an answer for that, because the timing was too perfect. The building that contaminated the creek, the building with evidence of Hale's sabotage, just happened to burn down the day after they confronted him. "We need to find proof," Noah said. "Real proof. Not just circumstantial evidence." "How?" "The building's gone. The contamination's been washed away by now. And we don't have access to Hale's property to investigate." Noah paced the kitchen, thinking. "The fire marshal said there were accelerants. If Hale said it deliberately, there'll be a pattern. Where the accelerants were placed, how the fire started, someone who knows what they're looking for could tell the difference between an accident and arson." "And you know someone who knows what they're looking for?" "Maybe." He pulled out his phone, scrolled through old contacts, found one he hadn't called in 3 years. His former supervisor from the fabrication company, a man named Ray Townsend, who'd done fire investigation work before switching to construction. The phone rang 4 times before Ray answered. "Hayes, that you?" "Yeah, it's me." "Well, hell, thought you fell off the planet." "Close. Listen, I need a favor." "Of course you do. Nobody calls after 3 years to catch up. But Ray didn't sound annoyed. What do you need? Noah explained the situation, the fire, the suspicion, the need for someone who could look at the scene and tell them what really happened. I'm in Oregon, Ray said. Can't exactly drive down there. I know, but could you walk me through what to look for, how to document it properly? Ray was quiet for a moment. You getting mixed up in something dangerous? Maybe. Probably. And you think this fire was deliberately set to frame someone? That's what I'm trying to figure out. All right, here's what you do. Ray spent 20 minutes explaining burn patterns, accelerant distribution, ignition points, how to photograph evidence, what to look for in the debris. By the time they hung up, Noah had pages of notes and a clearer sense of what he was looking for. We need to get onto that property, he told Ava. Hale's not going to let us anywhere near it. Then we don't ask permission. She stared at him. You want to trespass on Hale's land right after his building burned down? I want to find evidence before it gets cleaned up or disappears. That's insane. You have a better idea? She didn't. So that night they waited until dark and walked the fence line with flashlights and cameras. The fire scene was still taped off, but there were no guards, no one watching, just the smell of burned chemicals and the sound of the wind moving through charred debris. They slipped under the tape. Noah moved carefully, photographing everything the way Ray had described. The burn patterns were wrong, too uniform in some places, too scattered in others. He found evidence of accelerant in 3 distinct locations, all positioned to maximize damage to the building's structure. This wasn't accidental, he said, crouching by the 3rd accelerant point. Can you prove that? With these photos and an expert witness, yeah. This is deliberate placement, someone who knew what they were doing. They were documenting the last section when headlights swept across the property. A truck, coming fast. We need to go, Ava said. They ran for the fence line, slipped back onto Ava's property just as the truck pulled up. Noah could see someone getting out, flashlights sweeping the scene. They crouched in the darkness, watching. It was Hale. He walked through the debris, checking something. Then he pulled out his phone, made a call. It's me, he said. His voice carried in the quiet night. I don't care what the fire marshal says. I want them investigated, both of them. A pause. Because they had motive and opportunity, and I don't believe in coincidences. He hung up, got back in his truck, drove off. Noah and Ava waited until the taillights disappeared before moving. He's going to press charges, Ava said. Let him. We've got evidence now. Evidence we obtained by trespassing on his property. We were on the fence line, public easement. It was a weak argument, and they both knew it. Besides, the fire marshal will do his own investigation. If we're right about arson, he'll find the same patterns. They got back to the farmhouse and downloaded the photos. Noah spent the next 2 hours organizing them, labeling each one, building a timeline that showed the deliberate nature of the fire. By the time he finished, it was past midnight, and his eyes were burning. Ava had fallen asleep on the couch, exhausted. He covered her with a blanket, then sat at the table looking at the evidence they'd gathered. It was good, solid, even, but it wasn't enough to prove Hale had set the fire himself. Just that someone had. And without a direct connection, the sheriff wasn't going to arrest anyone. Noah's phone buzzed, a message from his ex. Ethan keeps asking about you. I told him you're working, but he wants to know when you're coming home. What should I tell him? Noah stared at the message. Home. Like that was a place instead of a feeling, like he'd ever had one that lasted. He typed back, tell him I don't know yet. I'm sorry. He hit send before he could overthink it. The next morning, Patricia Weston called. Her voice was tight, professional, the kind of tone that preceded bad news. Miss Sterling, I need you to come to the bank, today if possible. What's this about? Ava asked, putting the call on speaker. It's about Marcus Hale, and some concerns he's raised regarding your operation. They drove to the bank in silence. Noah could see Ava's hands shaking on the steering wheel, the way she was breathing too carefully. When they arrived, Patricia's office felt smaller than before, colder. Hale was already there. He sat in the corner, suit perfect, expression neutral, like he'd been invited to a business meeting instead of an ambush. What's he doing here? Ava demanded. Mr. Hale has filed a formal complaint, Patricia said, regarding criminal activity originating from your property. That's bullshit. Please sit down, Miss Sterling. They sat. Hale watched them with something that might have been satisfaction. He's claiming we set his fire, Noah said. That's the complaint. Among other things, Hale said, I've also raised concerns about the safety of the operation, the validity of the compliance reports, and whether the bank is adequately protecting its investment by allowing someone with clear criminal intent to continue operating. Criminal intent? Ava's voice rose. You contaminated my property. You've been sabotaging me for months. And now you're accusing me of arson? I'm presenting facts. Your compliance officer documented violations. Those violations mysteriously disappeared after you hired outside help. He gestured to Noah. Help that includes someone with no verifiable credentials and a clear conflict of interest. I have credentials, Noah said. 10 years in fabrication and structural engineering. With documentation? Noah didn't answer. Because he didn't have documentation. Hadn't needed it in years. Most of his work history existed in the memory of former supervisors and paychecks that had been direct deposited into accounts he no longer had access to. That's what I thought, Hale said. Patricia folded her hands on the desk. Mr. Hale has requested that the bank conduct its own independent investigation. Given the seriousness of the allegations, I'm inclined to agree. An investigation into what? Ava asked. Into whether you've been operating in good faith, whether the compliance work was actually completed to standard, whether the bank should continue supporting this operation. Patricia's expression softened slightly. I'm sorry, Ava, but my hands are tied. If there's even a possibility of criminal activity, I have to protect the bank's interests. So you're taking his word over mine. I'm following protocol. Hale stood. I think we're done here. Patricia, thank you for your time. Ms. Sterling, I truly hope this gets resolved quickly. For everyone's sake. He walked to the door, paused. My offer still stands, though given the circumstances, I'll need to revise it downward to account for the increased risk. He left. Ava sat there, frozen. He's going to get away with it. Not if we can prove what he did, Noah said. How? We don't have enough evidence. The sheriff's not going to investigate based on burn patterns and suspicion. She looked at Patricia. How long do we have? The investigation will take 2 weeks minimum. During that time, I'm required to freeze any additional financing and put your loan into review status. Which means I can't make payroll, can't buy equipment, can't operate. I'm sorry. They walked out of the bank into morning sunlight that felt wrong. Too bright. Too normal for everything falling apart. He won, Ava said. After everything we did, he still won. Noah wanted to argue, wanted to tell her they'd find a way. But standing there on the sidewalk, watching people go about their ordinary lives, he couldn't find the words. His phone rang. Unknown number. Yeah, he answered. Mr. Hayes, this is Daniel Moreno from the fire marshal's office. I understand you have some photographs related to the Hale property fire? Noah's pulse quickened. I do. How'd you get my number? Sheriff Garrett mentioned you'd been documenting some irregularities. I'd like to see what you found. They met Moreno at a coffee shop 20 minutes later. He was younger than Noah expected, 30 at most, but he moved with the confidence of someone who knew his field. He looked through the photos on Noah's laptop, comparing them to his own investigation notes. These are good, he said. Very good. You have experience with fire investigation? I have experience with knowing when something doesn't look right. Moreno smiled slightly. That's more valuable than you'd think. He pulled up his own photos, set them beside Noah's. Look at this. The accelerant distribution you documented matches what I found. 3 distinct points of origin, all positioned to create maximum structural damage while minimizing the chance of the fire spreading to adjacent properties. So it was arson, Ava said. It was definitely arson. The question is who set it. Hale owns the property, Noah said. He's the one who benefits from destroying evidence of the contamination. Maybe, but proving he set it himself is another matter. Moreno closed his laptop. However, there is something interesting. I found security camera footage from a neighboring property. It shows a vehicle leaving Hale's land around the time the fire started. Hale's vehicle? No. That's what's interesting. It's a truck I don't recognize. Not registered to Hale or any of his known associates. He pulled up an image on his phone. You recognize this? Noah looked. It was grainy, shot from a distance, but the truck was distinctive. White panel truck with damage on the rear quarter panel. I've seen that truck, Ava said slowly. At the salvage yard, Gil's place. You sure? Pretty sure. It's got the same dent pattern. Moreno made a note. I'll need to follow up on that. If this truck was involved and it's connected to the salvage yard, that opens up new possibilities. After he left, Noah and Ava sat in the coffee shop, letting the implications sink in. You think Gil was involved? Ava asked. I don't want to think that. But we need to know. They drove to the salvage yard. Gil was in the office, going through invoices. He looked up when they walked in, smiled. Ava, Noah, what brings you by? We need to ask you about something, Ava said. About the white panel truck with the damaged quarter panel. Gil's smile faded. What about it? Who drives it? My nephew, Tommy. Why? Because it was seen leaving Hale's property the night of the fire. Gil set down his pen slowly. You think Tommy was involved in that fire? We're trying to figure out what happened. Tommy wouldn't do something like that. Kid's got problems, yeah, but he's not an arsonist. Does Hale know Tommy? Noah asked. Gil hesitated. Tommy's done some work for Hale, odd jobs, nothing regular. What kind of odd jobs? I don't know. Tommy doesn't tell me everything. Gil stood. Look, if you're suggesting my nephew burned down that building, you're barking up the wrong tree. We're not suggesting anything. We're just trying to understand what happened. Then go talk to Tommy. He's over at the east lot sorting scrap metal. They found Tommy 20 minutes later. He was young, maybe 22, with the nervous energy of someone who'd been caught doing something wrong too many times. When he saw them approaching, he looked like he wanted to run. Tommy? Noah said. We need to talk to you about the fire at Hale's place. I don't know anything about that. Your truck was seen there. I wasn't there. I was there, but not when the fire happened. When were you there? Tommy looked around like he was checking for escape routes. Earlier, like 6 o'clock maybe. Hale called, said he needed help moving some equipment out of that building, paid me $200 cash. What kind of equipment? Containers, chemical containers. He said they were old stock, needed to be relocated before the county inspector came through. Noah and Ava exchanged glances. Where did you move them to? Ava asked. Another building on his property, the one by the main road. Tommy shifted his weight. Look, I didn't know anything about a fire. I just moved the stuff and left. Did you see what was in the containers? No, they were sealed. Hale said not to open them. What time did you leave? Maybe 7:30. I went straight home after that. Ask my girlfriend, she'll tell you. After they left, Noah pulled out his phone and called Moreno. I think we just found your connection, he said. Moreno brought Tommy in for questioning that afternoon. With a lawyer present, Tommy told the same story. Hale had hired him to move chemical containers out of the building hours before it burned. Moreno confirmed the timeline matched, confirmed the containers Tommy described were the same ones that had been storing the contaminating chemicals. Hale cleared out the evidence before burning the building, Moreno said, meeting with Noah and Ava later that day. That shows premeditation. He knew what he was doing. Can you prove he set the fire? Ava asked. Not directly, but I can prove he removed evidence shortly before the building burned under suspicious circumstances. Combined with the arson indicators and the timing, it's enough to open a criminal investigation. What happens now? Now I present my findings to the prosecutor. They'll decide whether to bring charges. He closed his notebook. I'll also be informing the bank that the fire appears to be insurance fraud, not criminal activity from your property. That should take care of Hale's complaint. After Moreno left, Ava sat on the porch steps, looking out at the fields. We might actually survive this, she said. Yeah, we might, because of you. If you hadn't documented everything, if you hadn't known what to look for, Hale would have gotten away with it. Noah sat beside her. I just took photos. You're the one who didn't quit when everything was falling apart. I wanted to quit, multiple times. But you didn't. That's what matters. They sat in silence for a while, watching the sun move lower in the sky. The fields looked different now, healthier, like they'd survived something and come through stronger. I need to tell you something, Noah said, about staying. Ava looked at him. Okay. I've been running for a long time. from jobs, from relationships, from anything that required me to actually commit to something. And every time I ran, I told myself it was because I had to, because circumstances forced me, because I didn't have a choice. And now? Now I'm realizing I always had a choice. I just kept choosing to leave. He turned to face her. But I don't want to leave this time. You're staying? I'm staying, if you'll have me. Not as temporary help or someone passing through, as a partner. Someone who's actually invested in making this work. Ava's eyes were bright. Are you sure? Because this place is going to keep having problems. Things are going to break. Money's going to be tight. It's not going to be easy. I know, but easy isn't what I need. I need something worth fighting for, and this is. He paused. You are. She kissed him, not desperately like before, but with something that felt like promise, like beginning instead of ending. We should probably talk about what this means, she said when they pulled apart. Logistics, money, how we split responsibilities. We probably should, but not right now. No, not right now. Patricia called 3 days later. The bank's investigation had been closed based on the fire marshal's findings. The loan was being reinstated with a revised payment schedule that took into account the successful completion of their first contract, and Hale's fraud case was moving forward, which meant he'd be too busy defending himself to make any more moves against Ava's property. You did it, Patricia said. You actually pulled this off. We did it, Ava corrected, looking at Noah. 2 weeks later, they signed the paperwork for their second contract, then a third. The revenue projections Ava had built started becoming reality. Not perfectly, not smoothly, but real enough to matter. Gil stopped by with a bottle of whiskey to celebrate. They sat on the porch, the three of them, watching the sun set. I'm sorry about Tommy getting caught up in Hale's mess, Gil said. Not his fault, Ava said. He was just trying to make some money. Still, I should have kept better track of who he was working for. Gil poured them each a glass. To new beginnings, and to not letting bastards like Hale win. They drank to that. A month after everything settled, Noah called his ex. Really called her, not just a quick text. They talked for an hour. It was hard, awkward in places, but honest. She agreed to let him start having regular calls with Ethan, with the understanding that he had to be consistent, had to show up, had to prove he wasn't going to disappear again. I'm not coming back, Noah said. I need you to know that. This isn't temporary. I'm building something here. His ex was quiet for a long moment. Good. You needed that. To build something, instead of just surviving something. The first call with Ethan was short, awkward. His son didn't know what to say to a father he barely remembered, but it was a start. And starting was better than hiding. By winter, the operation had stabilized. They'd paid down a chunk of the loan, hired a part-time worker to help with equipment maintenance, started planning for spring planning with a realistic budget and contingency funds. On Christmas Eve, Ava and Noah stood in the barn, looking at the tractor that had started everything. Remember when you first fixed this? Ava asked. You mean when you were covered in mud and ready to murder me for offering to help? I was not ready to murder you. Elena pulled him into a hug, longer than usual, and Daniel felt her shake slightly. You changed my life, she said into his shoulder. You know that, right? You changed mine too. They separated, and Daniel packed his equipment for the last time. As he drove through the estate gates, he looked in the rearview mirror and saw Elena standing in the courtyard, one hand raised in farewell. He didn't feel sad, just aware that chapters ended, and that was part of living. Noah had spent years thinking he needed to have everything figured out before he could commit to anything. But standing there in the barn with Ava, surrounded by equipment they'd repaired together and plans they'd built together, he realized that maybe commitment wasn't about having answers. It was about showing up and doing the work even when you didn't. Ava turned to him. What are you thinking about? How different my life looks now than it did 6 months ago. Good different or bad different? Scary different, but good. He pulled her closer. Really good. Outside, snow started falling. Light, gentle, covering the fields in white. The kind of snow that made everything look new. And for the first time in a long time, Noah felt like he belonged somewhere. Not because it was easy or perfect, but because it was real. Because he'd chosen it and kept choosing it, day after day. Because sometimes the best things in life aren't the ones you plan for. They're the ones you stumble into with a broken down truck and no idea what comes next. The ones you fight for even when logic says to walk away. The ones you build with someone who refuses to quit, even when quitting would make sense. Ava had saved her father's legacy. But more than that, she'd built her own. And Noah had found what he'd been looking for all along, even though he hadn't known he was looking. A place to stand, a reason to stay. And someone who made the standing and staying worth it. That was enough. More than enough. It was everything.